Thanks so much for joining us today on Feelin' Good, sponsored by Warren County Community Services. I'm Shelley Abrams, your host, and I am delighted to bring you a wonderful opportunity to visit inside the Warren County Historical Museum, the Harmon Museum, and introduce, or I'm sure that you know, Michael Coyan as the executive director.
Yes, indeed.
And Michael and I have, we were just chatting before we started filming. We have been in community theater productions together. We have actually done promotions in Lebanon for different types of special events. And I was here interviewing Randy Overbeck for this last month's Feelin' Good in the gift shop. And Michael was there, and I said, oh my gosh, we have to have an entire show, at least one show, where we talk about the museum, all the changes, maybe just some of the future projects that are being planned, because just in our chatting today, we could go on and on for, hours, but we're somewhat limited. So without further ado, Michael, please give our audience a little update on you, your life, and where you are today.
Well, after 33 years of teaching college, I finally retired, although they frequently ask if I can come back. But in the latter years of teaching, I had started again to cut back on classes. And part of that was I was a primary caregiver for my mother, and it was more convenient. And I started coming down here again, and I had been associated with the museum in 6th or 7th grade, because the lady who lived across our street, I mowed her lawn. And she was a widow, not a widow, she was an old maid school teacher. Her name was Mary Lincoln. She was the last living great-grandniece of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh my.
And Miss Mary asked me if I could come down on Saturdays to help the ladies who were then running this museum to move objects because they couldn't pick them up. So that's when I met Hazel Spencer Phillips, who founded the museum, and Hazel Lewis Brooks, who was her right arm in getting things done, and Lena Irons, and all of those incredible people who worked so hard in the 40s and then bring the museum down to this building in the 60s from Glendower Mansion. I was talking to the then director, and she said, well, finances of any museum are always dicey. So I came up with the idea of doing a benefit, of doing a reading of the Christmas Carol as though it were a 1930s radio show. So with the help of some of our mutual friends that we used to work together in community theater, we did that on the Village Green, and it sold out and made the museum a nice little bit of money. But in rehearsal, I would walk around the building, and I'm looking at the paintings and the art through a different set of eyes, through a professional set of eyes. And I realized that for the most part, while they appreciated the artwork, they really were using it more decoratively and didn't really know its value or how important it was to not just Lebanon and Warren County's history, but to the history of the Northwest Territory. Because of the 13 painters who began in the Northwest Territory, this museum has 9 examples of those first 13 painters.
Amazing.
And so, as time went on and I cut back further on classes, I decided that they could not spend $5,000 sending paintings off to have them professionally cleaned. So I called Jean and Rosemary Chute, who were my high school art teachers and mentors.
Yes.
They were in retirement. They came in. We decided to start an art conservation room where we could clean, restore, patch holes, and so forth and so on. Then we roped in Sylvia Thompson Outland, who was my sister's best friend in high school and who was like a sister to me and still is. But She came in and we literally created an art conservation lab to save the museum thousands upon thousands of dollars. And we began work on systematically cleaning, maintaining, and even deacidifying works in the collection that were on paper, like watercolors or documents. So instead of sending that out, we can do it in-house. Well, that went on. I eventually fully retired, and then the curator retired. And I was asked if I would take that position.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, all right, I'll jump into that. And we began to look at the organization of the vault and those types of things. And it was shortly thereafter that I was approached by the president and vice president of the board, and they asked if I would consider becoming the director. And I told them, I said, well, I'll tell you this. If I do, I want to open the doors and blow the dust out of the place. And by that I meant I knew that there were exhibits here that people were fond of, but I took an exhibit down the first week I was director, and a friend of mine who just recently passed away, Dennis Dalton, said to me he remembered when that exhibit went up. And he said, Michael, it went up when I was 16 years old.
Oh, my.
He said, Michael, I'm 75.
Mm-hmm.
I know of no museum that stayed static for 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
So with sort of unleashing the staff, because they're all incredible professionals, from John Zivkas to Nathan Growellman to Lisa Holtz and Jeannie Doan, who's our rock, and all of the incredible talented volunteers who are experts. A lot of them retired, some of them semi-retired, but they're experts in their fields of textiles or books and manuscripts and documents or history like John. And I just sort of let them loose. And of course, a week after that started, then we wound up with COVID.
So that was a challenge that
Yes, indeed.
no one anticipated.
No.
So what did you do during that time?
What happened, we had to close the museum to the public,
Uh-huh.
but I spoke with our heating and air conditioning company, and they assured me about the air exchange throughout the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we were equidistant from each other and masked whenever we passed or were near each other, we could go ahead and work on projects.
Okay.
So we started, and people like Sue Watts and others completely repainted the village green. We redid all the shops on the village green because I believed less is more. You couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
So we have literally put 2/3 of the collection in storage. We put only 1/3 of the collection out at any given time, and then we rotate it throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
That got us through. And then that gave me time to really think about new programming that we could offer.
Right.
So it was a blessing and a curse.
Right.
The museum suffered financial losses, of course, but with the support of the board and the support of our membership, we recovered and reopened and gained a new momentum.
Well, you made excellent use of the time,
Well,
right?
indeed.
And people, I'm sure the people that helped with everything, all the specialties that needed to be done, they were more than happy
Mhm.
to be down here and still kind of be together safely, so on and so forth. Well, let me ask you this, just in terms of overall, this does represent all of Warren County.
Oh, yes.
And the artwork is just not limited to Warren County citizens or Warren County visitors. But every time you mention to me, this is a world class, this is a one of a kind, so on and so forth, I'm always so amazed at the resources or the people that walk in and say, we love this, we have a collection we'd like to consider
Yes.
giving or donating to you. I know you said that happens. Tell us a little bit. I don't know. I don't even know where to begin. There's so much in the story because I don't even know if people have never been in this building.
Mm-hmm.
They would have no idea, would they?
No. As a matter of fact, one of the things, because, the museum has been run on a shoestring for a number of years.
Mhm.
And we still have a healthy budget, but it's still tight,
Mhm.
as most museums. But one of the things that frustrates me is that someone will step in the door from a town in upstate New York, or they'll go through the museum in 3 hours and they can't believe it exists. And then I have someone who's lived in Lebanon for 30 years who will call me on the phone and insist there's nothing next to the public library. And I said, well, then I'm sitting in 70,000 square feet of nothing. But when the museum was founded in 1940,
Okay.
there were no other historical societies or museums in the county.
Mm.
And while I am supportive and really like the synergy in working with the other institutions,
Mhm.
I cannot apologize for our success, because generation upon generation have kept the nose to the grindstone and built this place
Mhm.
and built the heart of the collection. I look at it as an incredible compliment that we have people who will wander in and find it comfortable enough, because as a collector myself of 19th century American oil paintings, I know for a fact you become attached to those collections and you're proud of that. And to leave that in legacy to an institution, you want to make sure it's not going to be sold off, stored inappropriately, never see the light of day again, and that kind of thing. A gentleman one day walked in the door. He was an elderly gentleman. He struck up a conversation with me and said he was descended from both Ichabod Corwin and Francis Dunleavy,
Really?
two of Lebanon's early founders.
Mm-hmm.
We walked through the building. We talked. We walked around the building. The cabin was being built, or reconstructed rather.
Mm-hmm.
He walked around and he had a fit about the state of the staircase in front of the building. And he said, what are your dreams here? I said, we need a new staircase. I want to uplight the building. I want new landscaping. The lobby needs carpeting. We need paint. He took it all in, never said a word. And we walked around, and I thought I'll never see him again. He's going to Florida. He came back in and handed us a significant amount of money. And then 2 years later, he gave us the entire contents of his home in Hamilton that he permanently sold. And in that included 10 cases of English sterling silver in the Edwardian age and 2 paintings owned early on by King Edward VII that are now hanging on the mezzanine. And we had a gentleman, the quality of the collection is what impresses people,
Right.
and the breadth of it.
Right.
I was so impressed over 2 months ago. I had a young Japanese couple come in the door on a Saturday morning, and they wanted to see the Shaker collection. So I took them upstairs, and he showed an extraordinary interest in the Jones Shaker collection, given to us largely in honor of Robert and Virginia Jones by Senator Portman and his brother Wim and his sister. And I found out that they had taken a direct flight from Tokyo to Cincinnati, come here because of the reputation of this collection. He builds Shaker reproduction furniture in Tokyo. He took measurements and photographs, asked for the permission to recreate a couple of images to name them Union Village, Lebanon pieces, because that's a hot market in Tokyo.
Really?
And I said, are you going on to the other Shaker communities in west of the Alleghenies? He said, no, we're flying back to Tokyo. We found no collection better than yours.
Oh my.
So that's the kind of...
What a compliment that
Exactly.
was. Right.
And so that's what really, with the staff, we want to make the community aware of what's here.
Mm-hmm.
We're very proud of it, and we want to keep it interesting. And as my staff says, we begin the day with laughter and we end the day with laughter. And that's kind of the way I run the ship.
Well, I mean, you have to be filled with joy that you are giving other people so much joy when they
Yes.
come and appreciate it so much, and are so amazed and surprised that they, at the end of their visit, they write you a check. I mean, you
Right.
know, I mean that is rather, you know, a compliment that not everyone can do, but yet for those who are able to, No one really, you didn't have to do any fundraising.
Right,
It was just sharing
right.
what you have here.
And some of the gifts that are given are collected by Warren County citizens or older families in the county.
Mhm.
Some are graduates of high schools of the county.
Mhm.
Some are documents. We just had 2 documents, large ledger books sent to us from Colorado. They were found, they belonged to Judge Joshua Collett, who was one of the most influential county judges in the 1820s. And what were they doing in Colorado? But the woman who found them, at her own cost, packaged these enormous ledgers, insured them, and made them make sure they came home to Lebanon, which is a phenomenal thing. We have a painting in the folk art collection of the twins, and it was featured on the Antiques Roadshow many, many years ago.
Oh.
And it is, they're related to the Maple family. Dixon Maple, who was a president here for many years, and Charters Maple, who was a prominent attorney. And they wound up in the possession of one of the descendants of the family who lived in Oklahoma. The lady died. Her daughter was in California, and I guess they had sort of drifted apart, mother and daughter. The sister, the daughter's aunt, realized how much that painting was worth and was trying to sell it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The daughter in California contacted me and she said, "Mr. Coyan, would you accept this painting? Mother always insisted that it come home to Lebanon where the twins are buried in Lebanon Cemetery." I said, "Well, we have to have clear title. I can't do it." So this woman went to the trouble of hiring an attorney, broke the will, got a hold of the painting, got all the legal documents in line. She drove it out to us from Oklahoma City in a snowstorm to make sure it was housed here permanently. That to me is such an incredible honor.
Right.
To have someone go to that length to make sure, and myself and my staff, we feel like we're the stewards of this place. We don't own it. We and I believe the board feels that. It's our job to make sure it's safe, it's preserved, it's conserved, it's presented beautifully, and it's passed on to another generation.
Which leads me to another thought. What types of programming do you feature for the children?
Oh, well, we have quite a bit.
Okay.
The first Saturdays of every month in the Beetle Cabin, which is the 1795 structure adjacent, which is also the first place west of the Alleghenies. In addition to it being the oldest wooden structure in Warren County, it is the first place on April the 19th of 1805 where the people known as the Shakers held a religious ceremony. And we didn't know that until almost 4 months after we moved it and dedicated it.
Really?
Yes, that was done as research from a scholar at the University of Richmond in Virginia. And he found the lost diary of Benjamin Youngs, one of the Shakers who walked out here from January and arrived at the corner of Route 63 and 741 in March of 1805. It was amazing. But at any rate, the first Saturdays are dedicated to colonial crafts. So for instance, if you want to learn this coming in May, they're going to be planting what they call heritage seeds, old varieties of squash and pumpkin and all that, so the kids can take things home in pots. They've done punch tin things. They've done all sorts of ideas with paper. They've done, you name it. I think they did clothespin dolls. And even the parents are allowed to come and participate in those kind of things. Last fall, we bought a brand new cider press, and the families would bring their apples and press cider out there so the kids could see how cider was made. And the kids got a great deal. Then we have the Harmon Arts program, and the Harmon Arts meets on the third Saturday of the month, and that's from ages 5 to 14. This Saturday will be something like paper quilling. Before that, we've done everything from small quilts to the diversity is amazing. And then we're getting off the ground with a group called, of course, the Harmon Adventurers, which is really aimed at junior high and high school age.
Okay.
So their whole participation will be somewhat different.
Mhm.
And then we have the ambassadors program, which we're just getting in line, and that will allow teachers K through 12 in Warren County to be provided with a tool in which they could take elements of objects in the collection and weave them into their class studies.
I am so happy to hear you say that because as I have run community leadership programs, so often, and I know that the Leadership Warren County
Mm-hmm.
program visited
Oh,
here
yes.
not too long
Yes.
ago when I was here before, and I was part of that program as well. But very often the teachers have a challenge in being able to schedule time
Right.
to be outside of their classroom
Mm-hmm.
to see what's available
Mhm.
in their community to weave back into their curriculum,
Exactly.
their lesson plans. So I'm delighted to hear that you have that ambassador program for them.
Well, we look at that IBM time clock, this huge cast iron monster with all these tabs and pulls and the wheel.
Mhm.
It still works,
Mhm.
but you have to know the geometry of it, and you have to know why was it used, why were these materials used, and so forth and so on. What was the choice made to create this? So we can look at that. We can look at astronomy. We can look at mathematics. We could look at every subject you can possibly imagine as we put all of this together. And that's the whole idea. I had someone say, why would you take or even consider taking a school bus trip to Cincinnati to that overwhelming museum? And it's a world-class museum,
Mhm.
but you could afford to bring them here.
Mhm.
And they can see, according to the Smithsonian, one of the finest collection of Hopewell, Adena, and Fort Ancient artifacts and geology outside of their museum in Washington. And even the state of Ohio admits that that collection that was put together in 1880 is, even Jack Blosser said it was better than, in many cases, what they have at Fort Ancient. So we're working closely with Fort Ancient in that World Heritage journey.
Well, I was just going to ask you, as far as a future program,
Oh, yes.
that is one of the ones that you had mentioned to me.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we started something because you and I both know I love the performing arts, and that's
Right.
where we spent so much time.
Mhm.
But we started music at the museum because I remember, as you do, when the Cincinnati Symphony used to come here, and we
Yes.
both worked to make that happen. It was a situation where every concert was something different. Broadway one time, ballet the next time, opera the next time. It was an incredibly diverse program. And it bothered me that I went to so many events and festivals and it was the same type of music over and over again. And I thought, no, we need something to showcase. So I started music at the museum 5 years ago, and Deal and Hubble were good enough to become the patrons of that, and they still are, and very supportive. And we started with a combination of classical and Appalachian and jazz and folk and ragtime, so that each concert was very different. Well, now I'm happy to say our audiences average 80.
Really?
And it's a Thursday night. It's the second Thursday. It runs literally February through June. And it's an hour concert with a bit of a break. So you don't have to drive to Cincinnati or Dayton. I know as I'm getting older, when I'm sitting after interval at Music Hall,
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking about what I have to do tomorrow and how the traffic is going to be getting back to Lebanon.
Right.
But if I can sit here and I can listen to a gentleman play Rachmaninoff on the piano and be home at 8:30, hey, I'll do it.
Right.
And so it's become very, very popular.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I read about it all the time,
Yeah.
and I think, let's see, here we are in April. I think for St. Patrick's Day time period in March, didn't you have some bagpipers?
No, we had a Scottish group
Oh,
in February.
That was it.
We had a Scottish group, the McGeeans,
Okay.
and it was the most amazing. And then we had in March, I can't think of the name. They were from They're a very good band, Fintan from
Oh,
Dayton.
okay.
And
That's,
they came in and
okay.
just blew the lid off the place. They're
Okay.
wonderful,
Okay.
great musicians. Then just this last Thursday, we had Stormy Weather, which is a jazz band out of Maineville, and they were incredible.
Oh,
Next month, we've got Gene Justice and Table 15, which is sort of folk.
yes.
And then we end with this incredible, talented young man by the name of Lincoln Napier, who is an incredible violinist, but not just classical. And that's going to be a real honey in June. So our concerts end when the Rotary concerts begin.
Oh, okay.
So we don't step on each other's
Okay,
toes.
good idea.
The museum's very careful, we try to be, of not trying to, overbook and overschedule things with other nonprofits and other community groups.
Right.
So,
Well, speaking of the future programs, tell us about the art festival.
that's an exciting one.
Yes.
And it's growing. As a matter of fact, we've got, I think, 2 more weeks of meetings before we finally set the calendar.
Okay.
But again, hopefully down the road, we'll be able to bring the CSO back to Lebanon as part of that festival. And, that's a lot of talk and a lot of calendar and planning. But the fact of it is, this is a sort of in combined with the health fair that the city does on Mulberry Street. So we chose to do that, and we're encouraging merchants to put art in their shop windows. And the city has offered to close Broadway from Main Street to South. We have right now over 40 vendors who have already been juried, and we're adding even more. So it's visual art. We're going to have a glass blower, and he is the man who makes the trophies for Ferrari.
Oh.
Yes, and he's done that for a number of years. He did an entire glass mural for the New World Trade Center in Manhattan. He's not a shy flower. He's a genius. So he's going to have a kiln up here. Fort Ancient will be here with some things from their gift shop. And then the museum is going to be featuring the performing arts. So we're going to have Swing Time. We're going to have the Bones of Cincinnatus, which is a 26-piece brass ensemble that's just amazing. We'll have Frisch marionettes, which are the large marionettes for kids.
Right.
We'll have mimes. We've got classical piano. We've got Appalachian. We've got some dancers. So we're still building the performing arts out.
And the date?
June the 1st.
June 1st.
From 10 until 8.
Okay.
And the evening closes off with a series of film shorts from DAAP in Cincinnati and students at Wright State. And there'll be like 15-minute clips, and they'll be on the big screen in the Armstrong. So we're touching everything. We're trying to get all types of music, all types of performance, and also the visual arts, and make it a wonderful day so people can wander through this arts block down here.
Oh my goodness. Well, just in listening to this interview, folks that are interested in contacting you about scheduling tours or, just visiting in general, could you give us the times that the museum is open and your contact information?
All right. We're open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay.
If you have a group of 10 or more and you would like a tour, usually our tours, we have a map and staff is throughout the building, and it's pretty self-guided because we have the galleries pretty well defined. But if you wish to have a tour, we can schedule that. And we can also work with you for a little extra, in addition to the discounted fee a group gets, to have a box lunch here at the museum. So you can go ahead and schedule your time if you would so like. Of course, a lot of people wander to the Golden Lamb, and there's no problem with that.
Right.
And oftentimes we have people who will come in and tour, go to lunch at the hotel, and then they come back in the afternoon, and that's perfectly fine with us because the hotel is very supportive of us, and we're very supportive of them.
And they would contact you on your website?
You could go to the website, WCHSmuseum.org, or phone us at 513-932-1817. And either Jeannie or Lisa or I or Nathan or Megan will be willing to help you schedule something and get something worked out.
Okay, very good. Any viewers that would be interested in volunteering?
Well, I'm so proud of our volunteer corps. And I'm not making these numbers up. Last year we tracked it. 4,410 hours. That's almost 16 and a half hours for every day of the week we are open.
Mm.
That's how many volunteers come in to help make this place work. And as I said, we are serious about what we're doing, but we have fun. And we get things done, and I think people feel comfortable. I appreciate the volunteers because a staff of 6 can't make this happen.
Right.
We're stretched thin to keep all of this going. But
well, I know that I was talking to you about the Miami University lifelong learning program, and I definitely am planning on making those contacts and maybe scheduling for our fall session in October.
Well, that would be marvelous. As a two degrees from Miami, and I used to teach in the School of Interdisciplinary Studies there for a number of years.
There you go.
So yes, Mother Miami is right here.
Yes, yes. Well, and I must say that the lifelong learners, I was just telling you about a class I came from before I arrived here today, was online, and it was about electric vehicles.
Yes.
And then the other day we had a class again from the Art Museum at Miami about generative AI.
Oh,
and so
yes.
it's the different groups that would be interested in history. It's kind of a back to the future, isn't it? I mean, you come here, you see historical artifacts, and yet you also see futuristic types of...
I will share with you 2 of the things that are the most amazing things for young people. It isn't the cows standing downstairs. It isn't any of the farm equipment. They are fascinated with a thing called a typewriter, and half of them don't know how to work a rotary phone, which we have several of them connected in the museum that you can use. Because you put your finger in that hole and you twist it around. So it makes me feel ancient, but nevertheless, they have the greatest time to see how this technology began.
Well, I brought my grandchildren a couple years ago during I think it was during Christmas festival time, we popped in, and you had the Beetle Cabin open.
Oh, yes.
Well, my granddaughter has never forgotten the Beetle Cabin. She's like, Grandma, let's go back there. I said, well, they have all these programs now, and we'll definitely go there. But you just never know what is going to stick in their minds about visiting. She just thought the Beetle Cabin was so fascinating.
There was a little boy here yesterday with his mother. And they were getting ready to leave, and they'd gone through the museum. And I said, now, if you go out by the cabin in the front, there's a little tree that's getting ready to bloom, and it's a cutting from a tree planted by Johnny Appleseed. The little boy went out, and Sarah Stegmuller was out tending the garden out there. And she said the little boy was over the moon because it was blooming, and it was a tree planted by Johnny Appleseed. And he thought everybody should have to pay extra money to see the tree planted by Johnny Appleseed.
There you go.
We have just now, after 7 years of research, working with UC Davis and Cornell, determined what the famous Union Village Shaker grape was. And the grape has been recrossed, and we're going to plant it out by the Beetle Cabin. It was lost around 1912. And nobody ever knew what the cross was that the Shakers came up with that made this grape so incredible that even Nicholas Longworth wanted it for his vineyards, but the Shakers refused to give it to him. And it took us 7 years of correspondence to figure this. But That and the discoveries we have every time we open a desk drawer, where someone 40 years ago put something away for safekeeping, and of course, they've gone long ago. But we open a drawer and here's a letter from Lincoln to Tom Corwin on White House letterhead. Or here's a piece of the battleship Maine that we didn't know we had. So
Right.
it's that everyday discovery that surprises me and the staff and the volunteers. It's like it never ceases giving.
Right. Well, this is definitely a must-see destination here in Lebanon, Ohio. And I'd like to thank Michael for taking the time today. I know you have many irons in the fire, and yet, busy people find a way to, create more productive time than anyone else.
It's always good time to sit down with old friends.
Yes, indeed. And on that note, we hope that you will take time out to explore the very special surroundings right here in Warren County and specifically here in Lebanon today as we maybe reintroduce you to the Warren County Historical Society, the Harmon Museum, and we hope that you are feeling good. Bye for now.